There are a lot of videos on YouTube and elsewhere for men talking about red flags to look out for when choosing a wife or a girlfriend. But I see far less videos talking about green flags, talking about positive indicators when you're looking for a wife or girlfriend. So in today's video, I wanted to offer another video on my own personal relationship green flags. My name is Zachary Stockill, and since 2013, I've helped thousands of men and women from across the world overcome retroactive jealousy and save their relationships. If you would like more information about my work or you'd like to work with me one-on-one, please visit my website at retroactivejealousy.com. For the people here for the first time, the term retroactive jealousy refers to unwanted intrusive thoughts, often obsessive curiosity, and what I like to call mental movies about a partner's past relationships and/or sexual/dating history. You can suffer from one of those symptoms, you can suffer from all three, but that, in essence, is what we're talking about when we talk about retroactive jealousy. And a topic that's often related to retroactive jealousy is the topic of vetting. In other words, deciding who is worthy, so to speak, of being in a relationship with. Signs to watch out for when choosing a wife or girlfriend, when choosing a partner. And obviously I could have made this video a little more, unisex. But I'm a guy, I'm heterosexual, and people ask me, Zach, do you have any tips on vetting? I'm not a woman, I'm not looking for guys. So I decided to offer this video for men interested in vetting for a wife or girlfriend. I recorded another green flags video a couple years ago. A lot of you like that. So here's another video detailing what I consider to be green flags when you are dating and when you're deciding whether or not someone is worthy of being in a relationship with. The first green flag is emotional stability. Now, to be very clear, emotional stability can mean many things. It can mean people who are relatively flat, and it can also mean people who are relatively emotionally numb. They're relatively stable, but they don't have a big emotional range. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. When I say emotional stability, I mean someone who can control their words to a considerable extent, who doesn't, lash out and get all dramatic and crazy, and, people who, to be honest, people who don't have certain personality disorders that cause them to be up and down and all over the place. I'm not saying anything negative about those people, but again, this is about me. Frankly, this is about people asking me what I look for in a wife, in a girlfriend. And I've always looked for a certain degree of emotional stability. Now, again, emotional stability does not mean being a flat line all the time or someone who lacks emotional range. I'm really talking about someone who's relatively in control of their emotions, or when they lose control of their emotions, they're self-aware enough to realize that they're starting to lose control of their emotions, take a deep breath, and get recentered. I think it's extremely difficult to be in a relationship with someone who's extremely dramatic, who's flighty, who's up and down and all over the place. It really isn't going to lead to a lot of long-term stability, which I think you should be looking for if you're looking for a happy, healthy, mature relationship. And I should have made this more clear at the very beginning of this video. These are my views. These are my opinions. If you don't agree, that's absolutely fine. I don't care at all. People are asking me about what I look for, and of course, this is a product of my own bias. These are my green flags that I've always looked for when I'm dating. My second green flag is compatible relationship goals. What does that mean? I mean, if I'm going to enter into a relationship, I have certain relationship goals, certain reasons why I want to be in that relationship. Companionship, sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy, certain degree of stability, and certain degree of emotional support, things like this. I have specific reasons why I want to be in a relationship. Other people have different reasons for being in a relationship. Let's get very real and very cynical to some extent. Some people are in a relationship primarily because of logistical advantages and or financial advantages. They want someone to pick up a lot of the rent every month, or they are afraid of being alone, so that's why they're in a relationship. Things like this. People enter relationships for many, many different reasons. So whenever I enter a relationship, or whenever I did enter relationships in the past, I would always like to have conversations about that. Like, why? Why be in a relationship? What does a relationship mean to you? That kind of thing. I think it's extremely important to have compatible relationship goals. My next green flag will be somewhat controversial, but it is what it is. When I was single, I would look for a woman with a long-standing interest in long-term relationships. Now, am I saying that a woman can never be single and, and all these things? Like, of course not, right? But I mean a long-standing interest. In other words, I want to be with someone who, like me, wants to be in relationships, has enjoyed relationships, has benefited from relationships, who sees the value in relationships. I never had any interest in trying to convert someone who was staying up until 3:30 in the morning at the club 7 nights a week, when I had to like sell her on a monogamous relationship. I've never done that in my life. That sounds like a nightmare. And I've always wanted to be with someone with a long-standing interest in long-term relationships. I think that should be pretty self-evident, but in case it's not, you can't change other people. So if you're dating someone who wants to be, open or whatever, like they're not interested in monogamy, and they want to stay out to the club till 3 a.m. every night, and they want to be all kinds of, they don't have a lot of interest, demonstrated interest in monogamy and long-term relationship, no judgment, that's great, but it's not going to work because we don't have compatible goals in that regard. So I've always looked for women with a long-standing interest in long-term relationships when I was considering entering into a relationship with her. Another controversial one, to be perfectly honest, I never really wanted to be in a relationship with a woman who is obsessed with social media. Now, obviously, I use social media. You probably do too. Most people in the modern world use social media, but I think there's a difference between using social media and being obsessed with social media. So you probably know what I mean. People who have to take a picture of every single meal they ever eat and then talk about it, and people posting selfies every hour of every day, and people who seem to thrive on this constant attention, constant validation, often from the opposite sex. Now again, no judgment against these people. I hope they find good partners. But for me, I never wanted to be with someone like that because number one, to be honest, I have a very conflicted relationship with social media. I know that I need it. I need it to communicate with my audience, et cetera, but I don't really love it. I'm not just kind of the guy I am. And number two, I've always thought it'd be extremely annoying to be in a relationship with someone where you're having to film them all the time. And to be honest, I think it's a bit of a red flag if someone needs constant attention, constant validation, especially from the opposite sex. So I think that's a pretty important one. Again, some people won't like it, but it is what it is. I always try to avoid women who seem to be obsessed with social media. This video is already running a little bit longer than I intended. Maybe I'll record a part 3 at some point. But another important characteristic for me is I always look for a woman with an open heart. What does that mean? Sometimes you meet people and they have all kinds of damage and all kinds of baggage and all kinds of guards and walls up around their heart. And there's a lot of reasons why people do that. They're afraid to get hurt. That's usually the main reason. Sometimes it's just habits they learned at a young age. Sometimes it's things they learned from mom or dad, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons why people will put up walls around their heart. But personally, I always found the most beautiful thing in the world to be a woman who just had the strength and the knowledge of self and the vulnerability to just be open. No game playing and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted a woman where it seemed like I wouldn't have to work and pry for years to gain her trust and to gain her love and all these things. You understand, I'm not saying that I only look for women who are easy in any sense, not at all. But you probably understand my point. There's some people out there with so many guards and so many walls up, and it can be kind of exhausting to deal with. So I was always really appreciative when I'd meet a woman and it seemed like she had an open heart. It's tough to deduce that sometimes on date 1 or date 2, but sometimes you can actually get a sense of how many walls and how many barriers a person is putting up. So for me, that was always a really green flag, a woman with an open heart. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you got anything out of this video, if you want me to record another video like that, if you have any other questions, please let me know. Leave a comment beneath this video. Please also take a moment to be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the silly like button, all that stuff. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you again soon.